Hi, I'm Kevin. In today's video, I'm going to be going through the process that I took for changing the brakes on my 1997 911 and 993. So I'm going to be doing the front pads, the rotors, as well as the rear pads and rotors. So first thing I do is I have a number 3 Phillips. The number 3 really fits well into the screw that holds the rotor in place when you're doing an installation. So let's remove those, and now focusing on the caliper, the uh, the brake pad wear sensor. There's two wear sensors, one for each side, and just gonna pull the red wire out, and just moving that clip that holds the brake pad wear sensor wire. Just moving that out of the way. So now I'm going to squeeze this. Okay, and the spring's out of the way. So now it'll lift up. The brake pad wear sensors plug into a system that the wheel speed sensor and the brake pad wear sensor plugs into. So I'm just removing the brake pad wear sensor wire here. I'm going to remove the brake fluid hard line. It's a 11 millimeter, so I have a flare nut wrench here. And I've got some protection for the paint. Brake fluid is really caustic, so you want to be careful of protection for the hands as well. I'm going to remove the bolts here that are holding the caliper on. So that's 10 millimeter. Now to spread the brake pads out, I have this tool. So I'm going to insert that in here. So now as I use the screw here to push the pads back into the caliper. Okay, so now with the caliper off the car, I'm removing the old brake pads, and you can see on the brake pads there's two vibration dampeners that we'll need to fasten. So now what I'm going to do is there's two different sizes for the vibration dampeners into the caliper here. So just putting those in, and these vibration dampeners, this peels off, and that'll help it, let's say, adhere to the pad. Okay. So while that adhesive paper backing is still on there, I'm just going to make sure the pistons are as retracted as they go. Getting the pistons as far back into the caliper as you can get them, that helps when you're putting the new pads in, because obviously they're thicker. So just peeling off the paper backing here. So here you can see the brake pad, and there's the dampeners on the other side. So here you can see the fixed line for the brake fluid that goes into the caliper. I've used a brass wire brush to knock off the surface rust that's on the hub here, because you want the new rotor to fit tight up against the hub. So you want that to be nice and clean. I've got the two screws that I've got them up on the top here, so I'll put the rotor on. Got those screws lined up now, screw holes lined up. Get the number 3 Phillips. And this is where these number 3 Phillips screws come in handy. They hold the rotor up against the hub while you're doing the install. On the caliper, this is where the hard line goes. Okay. So I've got the hard line brake fluid connected into the caliper. This is the spring that holds down the brake pads, and this fits in the top, and this is the brake pad wear sensor, and this is the clip that holds down the red portion of this. So what I'm going to do is feed this into the caliper. Just inserting the brake pad wear sensors into the brake pads. So there's slots here in the brake pads for this. Brake pad wear sensor cable up through the spring here. And the red, it kind of loops out, and then you'll secure it with this spring. And I'm just going to squeeze the spring that holds down the brake pads in the middle here, and there's a slot which it'll then fit into on the bottom. Okay, moving to the back of the 993, I've got the caliper bolts loose. I've got the brake pad wear sensor. I have it removed, and I've loosened the spring, so I've squeezed that so it came out, and now I'm just getting the caliper bolt, last caliper bolt out. So it's a flexible line, so I can just pull it out and then let's say suspend or hang the brake caliper. With the rear brakes, the parking brake pads are like drum brakes inside the rotor here. So you have to make sure that with the parking brake off, that the rotor is able to rotate. And the way you do that, there's a star gear behind this observation hole, and you put in your flathead screwdriver, and you just notch it so that it's loose, and then you'll be able to take the rotor off. So sometimes that's how. So here you can see the drum brakes for the parking brake, and I'm gonna take some of the surface rust off of the hub with the brass brush. I'm going to use some brake clean, to clean this whole assembly while I have it open. So now, in order to get the new brake pads into the caliper, I have to get the pistons to retract fully. So now in the rear, because I still have the flexible brake line connected to the caliper, when I push the pistons back, it's going to push brake fluid towards the front reservoir. So what I've done is I've opened up the cap in the front reservoir, and I've got my tool here. So just carefully making sure the pistons are fully retracted into the caliper. Okay, and that gives room for the new brake pads. So I've got the new shims, and just like the front, the shims are a different size. So put those in. Okay. And the new brake pads drop down from the top. They've got the new brake pads in. Now the brake pad wear sensors go in. So I've got the black brake pad wear sensor going through the spring, and the red brake pad wear sensor going through the spring that holds down the brake pad. And now I need to compress the spring so that it goes behind the slot here in the caliper. Okay, so we've got the rear is complete now, and what's left to do now is to bleed the brakes. And of course, the reservoir being on the left-hand driver's side, the furthest point would be the rear, and then passenger side. Then you'd come over to the rear driver's side, passenger front, and then the last and shortest point for bleeding the brake lines is the driver's side front. I hope you found the video helpful. Take care now.